Welcome back YouTube, and it's been a while since I done a video, and I was thinking that it was July 2018 that I actually bought this bike after a 15-year layoff of motorbikes. And I'd grown up in the 90s on motorbikes and in the 80s, and this is actually the second bike that I've ever bought that's been used. And I bought it on a risk. I didn't know much about them. If you've seen any of my other videos, you'll know that I wasn't sure whether I was going to be able to ride it or not. And we're 4 years on, and I've bought another one as well, and I've got two of them. And I thought what I'll do is I'll do a video of a 4-year review on why I've fallen in love with this bike, the alterations that I've done and why I've done those alterations. And if someone's out there looking for either a starter bike or or a performance bike, or just looking at this range, hopefully over the next 45 minutes I can help you try and make up your mind whether the bike's for you or whether it's not for you. You go on YouTube and tap in bike reviews, and the market's flooded with bikes that you can buy from £8,000 up to £20,000, and I haven't got that money to spend on a bike, and you might not have that money, but you still want to get a bike that performs well, that you're comfortable on, and in my opinion still looks great. So yeah, let's get on with a review, and let's take a look around a bike. So here we have my 2001 Y registration ZX6R J2 in chrome yellow and purplish black. When I purchased the bike, the paint was quite flat, but as I said, I'd worked in the motor trade for a long time, so all of the panels came off, tank included, all into my kitchen, and I done a professional detail mop on all of the paintwork. As we move to the front of the bike, you'll see a dash cam on the front, and I have one for the rear, and I've also put a fork brace on the forks. I remember doing this on my RD350, and that stops a lot of flex in the forks. So as we move to the calipers, you can see that I've fully refurbished those. That includes the seals. And we move up to the master cylinder, which I've replaced with a Brembo RCS 19. Also got a Domino quick action throttle and heated grips. Now the quick action throttle and the heated grips really help with my wrist as I suffer with carpal tunnel. So we're just going to move down and have a closer look on the paintwork. This is the right hand fairing. I did have to do a lot of touching in and polishing on here. It's probably got the worst mark on it, but you'll see that overall the paintwork is excellent. So just coming on to this side of the engine casing, underneath there is the clutch, which I've actually replaced with a full EBC clutch kit. So this rear shock was taken from a brand new ZX6R 2021 model. We've just gone past the master cylinder for the rear brake, which is completely refurbed, and you can see there the rear caliper has also been completely refurbed with seals and paint. Just moving on to the exhaust pipe, we have a full race arrow system. That includes the headers. It has got a high level mount, and that's why I haven't got any rear pegs. And obviously you've got the large oval carbon slip-on. So as we move to the back, you'll be able to see my rear camera for the dash cam. The main unit is stored underneath my rear seat and is straight away in operation as soon as I turn my ignition on. So we're going to take another look at the rear shock from the 2021 model, and also just underneath you're going to see some grease nipples. There's actually 4 of them, and it's well worth making sure that they're well maintained and you have fresh grease in them. So moving to the rear sprocket, see I keep my chain nice and clean. I've actually fitted a 43 tooth sprocket to get better performance on acceleration. So moving forward, I've fitted a 14 tooth front sprocket for better performance under acceleration. I've also fitted a Hilltech quick shifter, and I'm just about to point to the gear sensor. I'm now just going to take a closer look at the paintwork on the left side fairing. Moving to the tail section and going across the seats, I've actually fitted a 2 cm gel pad underneath the front seat, and again just taking a closer look on the paint on the tank. Now as we move forward, you'll see a camera mount with a microphone, plus also you'll see that my front forks have been dropped 20mm through the triple clamp. Moving on to the dash, you'll see that I have a gear indicator mounted just above. You'll also see that I've got 28,825 miles on the clock, and I've actually replaced all my dash lights with LEDs, so it's brighter. Here we have the control panel for the Oxford heated grips. So just moving around to the front nose cone, we can take a look at the paintwork, and also I fitted an Airblade double bubble screen. I also purchased a Holtz headlight cleaning kit to try and take as many scratches as possible out of the headlights. Now moving down to the front discs, the EBC wavy discs were already on the bike. They're not my choice. I would prefer just the standard round ones. You can also see there that I've used OHA braided lines, and also looking at the paintwork that I've done on the front calipers. Moving around to the tyres, you can see I have got fitted a Michelin Power RS on the front and an RS Plus on the rear. Now I've done approximately 2,000 to 3,000 miles on the tyres, and I've also done 3 track evenings round Brands. They're an incredibly good tyre. Unfortunately you can't get them now, but they've been replaced by the GPs, which I'll probably try next. Well, hopefully that hasn't been too much of a cheese fest for you. Let's get out and ride the bike. So we're kitted up, we're ready to go out for a ride. It's actually MOT day, so we're going to take a slow cruise down to the MOT station. I know she'll just fly through, got no problems with that. And yeah, see how we get on. Cheers guys. Just putting my other glove on. We're ready to go. Nice and comfy. Haven't been out for about a month, so apologies for any poor riding. Now the first thing I notice on this bike is the comfort. I am at one with the bike. That sounds like old bollocks, doesn't it? But it just feels, and the adjustments that I've made are absolutely spot on for me. So the bike I instantly gelled with, and talking about gel, I put a 2 centimetre gel pad in the seat. They are a little bit stiff, but it just made it really nice and comfortable. just for those extra long rides. Hopefully you got a nice view, and the camera's not too bad. And I was trying to work on the microphone last night because, as I say, not got a GoPro, not got the GoPro set up. I've got a cheap Picasso sports cam, which I find really good for pictures. It's just the microphone again lets it down. I love this through the traffic as well. You know, the gearing mods that I've made do help with the mid-range. This is the thing I love about 600s. You can rev them. You can rev them. You can't. Like, you're going to rip your license up if you're on 1000cc. I mean, that's not saying these things are slow. Interestingly about the gearing, I go on a gear calculator, and it says that the top speed on this now has gone from the 161 mile an hour, or 163, whatever they say it is, down to about 145 with the gearing changes. Now, even the 163 you're not going to use, well, unless you're on a very straight road, on a track maybe. This gearing, I mean, after going around Brands Hatch and non-public roads, I mean, this will go to 130 very quickly, and you don't need any quicker. And if you go on the if you're on the motorway and you're doing 140, as soon as you go over double the speed limit, I wasn't aware that it changes from a speeding offence, and basically you're looking at jail time. So a lot of people will argue, well, what happens if I don't get caught? But I don't know, it's just not worth it. I mean, doing those kind of speeds nowadays, there's too much traffic on the road. I just absolutely love this bike. I love it so much I've gone the wrong way. I was actually meant to go straight across there. I've gone in, we can get to it this way, so it's not a problem. We just go down the hill. And you can generally see that I keep it under 4,000 revs. We're in 6th gear. I can pretty much do anything on this bike. I can do the track days. I think it does a disservice. A lot of people now say the ZX6R, these models are not super sports. They used to be called super sports, and now they say the all-rounder, the sports tourer. And I really think that's doing it a disservice, because it's almost implying that if you took it on the track, it's not going to keep up with the likes of the R6, the GSX-R 600, and probably in bog standard going around the track, yeah, you'd be quicker on the others. They are lighter. Around about the same year, there were heavy improvements on them. But you've only now got to look at the pre-injection 600 class, and that's won by I don't know whether it's a G or a J model, but it's the same engine with the standard 6-pot calipers on there. A little bit of fact, water, hate it. Even though this is my acclaimed wet winter bike, you can see that it gets cleaned off every single ride out, so that means 10 minutes, 15 minutes have got to be spent getting this water off the bottom. I don't like it. So suspension, as you know, I've changed the suspension. The faults are from the A1P, and I think back to the original suspension. Was that bad? Did I need to change it? No, is the answer. I didn't need to change it. It was sufficient. The rear shock is oversprung, and I would say the front forks are slightly undersprung and slightly underdampened. we're being super critical here, because if you're getting on something like this, a 22-year-old bike, and most of them will have between 20, 25, maybe 30,000 miles, are you going to expect everything as new? No is the answer. A quick promotion, shout out to them, Maze of Crayford, Dartford, are now proper old school, and I've turned the wrong one, so we're going to have to go in here because I had a car right up my back seat, and we're going to flip round. Here we are. So as you see here, we are proper old school. MOT viewing area. We got the headlight beam assist, and then we got the old style for testing our brakes. There she is. My God, she's beautiful. I love you. Cool, guys. Alright, come off here, do a little trip up the motorway, go for a little ride, shall we? I think so. Those people that have got on this and ridden it say how much smoother it feels because of the carburation. That's another thing with carbs that I love, especially if they're well set up, well balanced. You don't get this joltiness like that you would sometimes get on fuel injection. We'll let this person go. Person up my arse is not very happy. Apparently I'm number one. Okay, thank you. Gonna put my heated grips on. I mean, we are absolutely singing, and it just, we're not going to hold this all day. The wind detection is much better with the air blade. These are slight modifications that most people would make. You know, at the end of the day, a standard bike is standard. Most of us will personalise that bike to us, and it's what those things you would like to do to the bike to make it your own. Now, I've adjusted the bike to fit my body. The bike itself, the engine, I think is just amazing, and they're just such a great base bike to work with. Just pop up to Brands Hatch. I'm not going to go round it though. Going to come off here, park up Brands Hatch, have a quick chat about the bike. Let's do it. When you're poodling, I mean, just under 4,000 revs. I mean, I'm in fifth at the moment. I think you would generally be doing with the other gear, and you'd probably maybe down in fourth. But you just change gears more, you know. If it's not pulling, my mate's got on it and try to show you like 1,000. It just doesn't work. You have got to rev them a little bit more. Let's get rid of this. Something's on today, I wonder what's on. Spin the bike round.
So, we're down here at Brad's. I don't know if you can hear me. Mine's about to fall over. Put it on a tripod. Something's going on down here today. I don't know what it is. But while we're here, let's have another look around the bike. And let's take a couple of laps around Brad's. Now, this was a couple of months ago, I think back in June, I think this was. So, let's take a couple of laps of Brad's. Unfortunately, I had planned to go around the bike again up at Brands. There was an event going on, so that stopped that from happening, and the camera work that I've got and the audio that I've got is not that clear.
So what I thought I'd do is just interrupt the review, so apologies for that, and basically introduce myself, tell you a little bit about my history, and also try and not necessarily update, but tell you why I go talk about comfort so much and why I've fallen in love with this bike. Okay, so first of all, my name's Tim. As you've just seen, I'm no professional rider. I'm not an ex-racer. I would class myself as an average Joe of the bike world. Like most of us, started our lives up on bikes and just progressed throughout our riding career, if you'd like to say. So I started off in 1990 when I was 16 on a little AR50 and worked my way up all the way through lots of bikes through the 90s, owned them and ridden lots of my mates' bikes and done lots of test rides. Ended up in 2003 buying my dream bike, which was an R1, and I sold that in 2005. Now in 2005 I sold my bike, and to be honest I never thought I'd ever ride again. I'd just basically given up. I wasn't really that interested. Marriage, kids, everything and life really had taken over, so I wasn't getting any free time, and that's one of the reasons that I sold the bike in 2005. Now the reason I talk about comfort so much, if I can take you back to when I was 11 or 12, my legs started collapsing. I started losing feeling, so I'd run around and all of a sudden I'd be on the floor. At that age you don't really care. My mum came out, she found me, so we went to the GP and they said it's growing pains. Progressively got worse and worse and worse. The GP took it more seriously, and we had an appointment to see a specialist. Took 18 months, which was when I was 15. It was literally a week after my 15th birthday. And so what they done is they took an x-ray. After looking at the x-ray, they said that one of my discs is prolapsed and slipped on L4, L5, if that means anything to anyone out there. The position of where it's happened, and what it's been doing is it's been crushing my spinal cord, my nervous system. That's why my legs were collapsing. And they basically said if they don't operate, I'll be paralysed within 3 months. So they done the operation. There weren't really another choice. Everything went well. The only thing I really remember was them taking out 72 stitches out my back while I was biting a pillow because they'd mistimed it and all the skin had grown over. It was bloody painful. But for all intents and purposes, everything went well. Early 20s, late 20s, I was playing football. I was extremely active. Early 30s, I got divorced, became a proper tar. I was 15.5 stone, really the tight t-shirts or the tight shirts where they don't fit properly. I've still got some of those shirts and t-shirts, and they don't fit me now, so I must have looked a right prat, but I suppose you've got to laugh at yourself. And met my new girlfriend, now wife, but everything was going well. You know, I still had pains in my back, and there was a couple of numbness, but you know, they said that it wasn't going to get any better, you know, and that was it, you know, just get on with life. Now I had found myself as a profession in motor trade, from selling cars, servicing cars, working on paintwork, and I was selling a car and I was doing a handover, and when I got out of the car to do the handover, I brought it round for the gentleman, I felt a huge pain in my back. I collapsed on the floor and I knew that it was different. Now from that I spent 9 months on a sofa, smacked out my head off on drugs, on prescription medication, and we were seeing doctors and specialists, all different hospitals, and they kept saying that they would be able to do an operation. However, they wanted me to see this top specialist, and it would take about 18 months to see him again. So what we done, we ended up going private rather than waiting 18 months, paid 350 quid and saw Mr. Gullen within 2.5 weeks. Unfortunately, that's how the world works. But to be truthful, it was probably the best money that we had spent. All of the other surgeons or the people underneath him, I forget what they call him, but when you have an appointment, you always it always says Mr. Gullen, but then you see one of his associates or whatever, and they kept wanting me to see him. But they had promised operations. They told me I'd be back up on my feet, and this was about 2 years in, and you know, I wasn't earning any money, and we went into his office, and he said, I've seen all your records, I've seen the operation you've had, I've seen all the x-rays now, and to be honest, you're disabled. You just need to get on with life. He said it was really bizarre, because he said if I went into my office and took out 90-year-old people's x-rays, that's what your back looks like. Then you've got disc degenerative system, or he spoke about disc degenerative. I'm still unsure whether I had that, but a lot of my discs are actually collapsed, got no water in them, and I've still got an anterior slip in L4, L5, and that's what's causing the pain. He said that there's so much going on with your back and the basically the old age. If we tried to operate, he believed that he would do more damage. And he said all you can really do is now manage it with cognitive behavioural therapy, with pain medication. I mean, I've had epidurals, facet injections. I went in and had 8 facet injections. I've had that twice, and nothing actually helps apart from pain relief and managing it mentally, to be honest, and just trying to get on as best as possible. So unfortunately, we lost our house, and it was actually a good thing, because we moved in with our in-laws, and this is my in-laws' garage. We ended up sorting out our finances, buying a new house, and it was at that point my friend turned up on a CBR 600F on a Y plate, the fuel injection one. And I took a look at it, and I'd gone through quite a bit of depression, sitting on the sofa watching daytime TV, being an extremely strong person, being able to provide, to not being able to do any of that. I said to my then girlfriend, now wife, I said, I've got to get a motorbike. I want to get a motorbike. I know how much freedom it gives. I know how much mentality lift it gives. I want to be able to get on the bike, go and have a cup of coffee and come home. You know, that's what we love doing. And she said, you don't know whether you're going to be able to ride with your back and how much that's going to hurt. And I said, but I need to try. So we took a look on eBay. This one came up. I'd ridden a ZX6R back in the 90s, and I thought it was amazing. The front end was amazing. And I thought I'd have a go at the 600s. I do prefer the 600s. I found my R1 far too quick. Going along the A2, and I looked down, I was doing 150, and at that point, being in the motor trade, I thought I'm going to lose my license, so I needed to slow down. It's one of the reasons that I sold the bike. But yeah, I found this one and bid on it and won. But when I went to pick it up, it wasn't in this condition. It had loads of stickers over it, which I hate. But the bare bones of the bike, and as I've said, I got on the bike and I rode it, and I couldn't stop smiling. It was so comfortable. It's actually more comfortable for me to ride the bike than what it is to drive a car. And I don't know whether it's just from the comfort level or the attachment level, or what it's actually given me mentally to be able to get on the bike, go out, have a drink, and come back home. How that's mentally helped, or even just coming into the garage and polishing it, or working on a bearing, or doing something over a week or whatever. I just absolutely love it. and I can't say enough about these bikes. So because I'd fallen in love with the bike, I started doing a lot of proactive maintenance, things like bearings, brakes, bleeding the brakes kind of thing, and yeah, just really trying to turn it into as a reliable bike as possible. I'll go into performance a little bit later of what I was doing and getting the engine running nicely. But yeah, I thought this was the second bike that I've ever owned that's been used. I've been fortunate enough to be able to buy new, and I thought, well, what I do is I'll have a look at the new bikes and see whether there's an option there for me. So we did go to the Peterborough show. I tried the Z1000, I tried the 2019 SP1 Fireblade, the new 636, all really great bikes, but when I got back onto my bike, I preferred this. It was just more comfortable, it fit me as a shape. However, the suspension, I could tell the difference. This was obviously 20 years old. The brakes, I could tell the difference, and even in the gearing with the 636, I mean, it's going to produce maybe 10-15 more brake horsepower, but I could just tell in the gear in the mid-range. So it did really get me thinking about bikes. So I then test rode more and more bikes, whether it be upright, forward, and every time I would test ride the bike, I would get back onto this one, and this just fits me, it just works fantastically. And I thought, why am I looking elsewhere when I've got a fantastic bike? Now, I did think, well, do you know what? I'll keep my eyes open, and this one had done 23,000 miles when I bought it. Thought if a new one comes up, or not necessarily a new one, a lower mileage one comes up, I would go for that and then sell this. Now also in 2019, my friend gave me this, which is a article from Performance Bikes, and it's a tuning guide on the Kawasaki ZX6R. Goes through the F, G and J model. It goes through how it was in the 90s and early noughties with Super Sport and Super Stock, I think it is, or the 600 ratings, what they were actually producing, what they actually done to the bikes with full systems, what they done to the brakes, how they made it lighter, things to look out for, transmission, steering geometry. It just goes through everything, and at some point I need to sit down and do a full review just on this magazine. So after reading that article, after riding so many different bikes and having so many different bikes back in the 90s, I realised that this is the bike for me, and that I could start spending some money on this, that if then I did update the bike and buy a newer one, get rid of this, everything I had done on it will be able to be transferred onto here. So the first thing that I done in 2019, I think it was around about June 2019, I started looking at suspension, because I knew that it was 20 years old, and that was the first thing that really needed updating. And I'd phoned around, and Maxton were absolutely fantastic, and again Maxton were recommended within that magazine. So Maxton gave me many different options, and the option that I went with was the most expensive, which was their GP10 rear shock, and which is obviously now on this one, and their SD25 inserts, and that basically you send your forks to them. I believe they have to reprofile them, but that brings it up to a 2019 standard. You have now rebound and compression on each individual fork. It's the kind of suspension, or it's the same suspension that they use around the Isle of Man or BSB. So it is very, very good. So when I talk about suspension, that's what was all on here, that when I bought my new bike all went onto here. And I was going to sell this bike. Now, I did start getting into, or I tried a track evening and fell in love with it. I wasn't sure how much I was going to be able to do, but I'd invested a lot of money into this because when I bought this one, it only had 1,900 miles on the clock. It's pretty much irreplaceable because you can't really get them now. You're going to be fortunate enough to buy one from a collector, or try and get one. So I thought, well, what I do, this isn't worth a huge amount of money. If I keep this and do maybe 3 or 4 track days or track evenings a year, if I throw this down the road, I can put new fairings on and not really lose a huge amount of money, where with this I wouldn't be able to replace it. It would have cost a huge amount of money to be able to replace this. So this is where I just done the rear suspension, and I haven't done the front suspension. So the front suspension is obviously from this A1P. So this suspension has only done 1,900 miles, or I've probably done about another 2,000 on top of that. So they've done about 4,000 miles, this front shocks. However, the bike has been standing, it is 20 years old, so ideally it could do with a refresh. And I've spoken to Maxton. At the moment I haven't got the money. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do with it. At the moment I'm nowhere near fast enough for it to even matter. So yeah, the rear shock, updating this to the new 2021 or 2019 model, made a huge difference. And yeah, at some point I will do another video on this, because if you check my videos I have got a video on this, but I will basically take it off and do a full fitting on it, just to show how easy it actually is. So I'm sorry that's taken 10-15 minutes of your time up. Hopefully it explains a little bit more about myself, not a journalist or anything, and where this review's coming from, why I've fallen in love with the bike, why I've done those alterations, why I talk about comfort so much. So yeah, I'll stop talking now and let's get back to riding the bike. Cheers.
Okay, so that was Brands. We've done Brands now, a couple of laps around Brands. You can see that although I am a slow rider, I'm not a fast rider. I've got to learn some, definitely I've got to learn some track craft. I don't mind revving it, and we're just about to have a funeral procession. God bless. I just reflect back to when I first bought the bike. The bike was standard apart from an MTC N-Can. And I got out on that motorway and I could not stop laughing. Could not stop laughing. And it was absolutely pouring down because I just instantly went, this bike is brilliant.
Okay, so let's talk performance. When Kawasaki released this model, they said that the brake horsepower was 108, and that's obviously at the crank. Now, most of us look at brake horsepower, and if we've gone down a dyno, it's at the rear wheel, and generally from the crank to the rear wheel, you'll lose about 10 to 12%, I believe. So from 108 back to there, you're looking probably around about 94 to 97 brake horsepower. And when I originally bought this bike, the only mod that it had was an MTC slip-on can with a baffle, and it did have a K&N air filter in it, although very grubby. So I took the K&N air filter out and cleaned it all up. And because I'd fallen in love with the bike, I was trying to get the bike to run as best as possible. So I looked into dyno jets. I'd never done dyno jets before. As I say, this was the second ever only used bike that I bought, and I'd never touched any of my new bikes. Looked at the dyno jet, also 4-degree advanced timing, put
put iridium plugs in. To be honest, I'm unsure iridium plugs and K&N air filter really make a performance difference. A good new clean air filter I think is just going to be as beneficial. But the great thing with the K&N air filters and the iridium plugs is you can take them out, clean the plugs. They're for 60,000 miles, and I mean I only do 1,500 miles a year, and the air filter gets taken out 4 or 5 times a year. I clean that up, so I know that I've got a nice clean air filter. So my friend was going down to the dyno, he had a GSX-R, well, still got his GSX-R 1000 and was having it mapped. And I thought, well, I've never been on a dyno, I'll take this down to the dyno. And with the baffle in and the dyno jet that the system that I put in, I put it in exactly as they said. So the jets that they said for basically just for a slip-on and for a K&N air filter, and adjusted the clips right in the middle to where they actually say. And with the baffle in, it produced 96 brake horsepower, and we took the baffle out and it produced 102 brake horsepower. So that was a 6 brake horsepower difference just by taking the baffle out. Where it gets more interesting is that I found myself going on a track evening, and at the time I used my A1P because it'd taken 2 years before I'd even got the bravery to even try my first track evening. And I had the MTC can. At the time I hadn't bought any of the Arrow, I'd literally swapped it all over. And I went down to Brands Hatch, and they have a noise level which is 103 decibels, and 102 decibels, and the MTC with the baffle blew 103 decibels, so they wouldn't let me on the track. I didn't have another baffle. Fortunately, it was very, very busy, and someone had a super quiet baffle, and I put that in, and it then blew 98 decibels. But when I rode the bike, it felt absolutely strangled. But it then made me realise that obviously the freer flowing that can be, the more brake horsepower you're going to produce, and you're going to be able to use the throttle. But I don't like super loud exhaust pipes. And what was really bizarre, I started watching a lot of YouTube videos, and one in particular was Nevi on MCN, and he takes a new GSX-R 1000 with a Yoshi slip-on. And he goes around Brands Hatch, and he says he didn't even have to put the baffle in. And I thought, that's really bizarre. How does he not put a baffle in when I've got a baffle and I can't even meet those demands? And someone said to me that if you buy a quality pipe, you'll be able to run it without a baffle, because they generally are quieter, the racer pipes. So I invested in this Arrow system for 750 quid, and I went down to Brands, and we put it on down at Brands, and it blew 98 decibels, and that's a full race system. So I then went down to the dyno, and the dyno blew it ran 104 at the rear wheel. However, it was running rich in places and leaking others. So we adjusted the main jet, we adjusted the clip, or I done that, and then took it back down the dyno, and it ran 106.5 brake horsepower. And I've since been down Brands as well, and it's blowing 98 decibels. So I know that I can run that brake horsepower at that noise level, which is fantastic. And to be honest, if we take 106 brake horsepower and we go back to the crank, around about 10-12% again, adding that on, we're looking at 117 to 119, 120 at the crank. And just inside this magazine, that's why I'm holding it. Back in 2000, they were
basically they were tuning the engines up internally. Now I've not done anything internally, and they've got the full systems on, and it goes on about having a full system. It was another reason that I thought about putting the full system on, and they're producing 122, 123 at the rear. So from not even tuning the engine, I'm only 14 brake horsepower down. I think that's fantastic, you know. And although I am putting this bike around the track, I still use it for the road. So I'm not prepared to mess with any of the internals because I want the longevity out of it as well. So as a standard bike with a standard exhaust pipe or a slip-on with a baffle, you're going to get around about 95 brake horsepower at the rear wheel. If you take your baffle out, you're going to get around about 100. However, if you want to take it on the track, that's not going to pass noise level. And then it's whether you really want to go for, because you're going to gain around about an extra 10, 11, 12 brake horsepower from standard. You go for a full race system, which, as I say, is a lot of money, and then it's dyno in it. Maybe putting a dyno jet system in there, although you can buy, I forget the make of the carburetor, but you can buy the standard main jets, just at different sizes. So if it's running lean, you could maybe put a bigger jet in there, and the clips are adjustable on the needle, the standard one. However, I find that the dyno jet profile just ran better. I was having a problem at 7,000 revs, and we tried lots of different options, and the dyno jet with the dyno jet main jet was the best option. Because I had swapped across, was using part dyno jet and part like original Kawasaki main jets, and basically I ended up phoning up dyno jet, getting a range of different sizes and changing those. So yeah, it's got a full dyno jet system in there. Apart from the springs, they're the standard Kawasaki springs in there. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, just ignore it. So it's whether you feel like you want to pay that extra money. If you're going on track and you want that extra performance, that's going to give you the best performance. And then it's internal. I've been told taking off the head and having it, changing the compression is going to give me the best brake horsepower. But for the money and what I'm going to get at the moment, I'm nowhere near quick enough. I don't need the speed, but just inside this magazine, Tony Scott used to do a 654 conversion. So TTS, I have checked, TTS still can get the pistons, and they can have them made. They're £600 just for the pistons, and then you need to take the head off, have it honed, and you can have it changed to a 654, but then I was told you need to update and change some other bits inside. Taking apart the engine, I was quoted £3,000. It's just not worth it. It will be good fun to have a 654. Then you're going to get around about 120 at the rear wheel. I think that would be the biggest increase, and would be a lot of fun, especially in the mid-range, because that's where I really do notice it on the throttle. It's not just that top-end performance of that extra brake horsepower, it is just the throttle response and how it runs. It just runs absolutely fantastic. So yeah, it's an option that you can take, and hopefully that gives you an idea of the 3 different levels of standard, running without a baffle, and the kind of performances that you can expect at the rear wheel.
If you're not really into DIY, or you don't think you can change your oil, or you're not going to do brake pads, or if you're not going to do stuff like that, yes, you are going to have to put it in a shop, and that's where you're going to spend your money. But you're more going to do that when there is an issue. So it's more reactive rather than proactive, and that's my thought process with maintenance. So the first thing I done was the wheels were off, and I done the wheel bearings. Did they need doing? Nope. But I done them because I wanted new bearings in them. when I had done the Maxton forks and sent them off, I had done the head bearing. Did the head bearing need doing? I didn't think so. After I'd done it, it made a massive difference, and you could actually feel how much difference it done. And I'd never done a head bearing before. I'd never done wheel bearings before. I just watched a lot of videos on YouTube, and you know, got the confidence from those to be able to do those bits. Then it was brakes. This is the biggest thing I see on forums about the ZX6Rs. 6-pot calipers. 6-pot calipers get an absolute hammering on these bikes for apparently not being very good, hard to maintain, hard to bleed.
Now when I bought the bike, it had hell braided lines on there. Everything else was standard, had the standard 6-pot calipers, had the standard master cylinder on there as well. Now personally I think the yellow looks tacky. I didn't like it. I wanted to put black lines on. So I started hunting around online, and I came across a company, because there's Ben Hill, there's Goodrich, there's loads of different companies, but I came across a company called OHA Motorsport. I don't know if you can see that there. That's their little stickers. I'm not sponsored by them, but I come across OHA Motorsport, and they sell hell lines. And two front lines, which they call the race setup, is for hell are 60 quid, and for the rear one they want 30 quid, so that's 90 quid for a set. However, on their website they have their own lines, which they charge £40 for the front lines, and they charge £20 for the rear, so it's 60 quid. There's a £30 difference. And I emailed them and said, like, what is the difference? And they said, well, nothing. Basically, they're of exactly the same standard, and the package that they come in, they show that they meet all this different DOT and TVU approved and race proven. They're being used in the race garages, you know, across BSB and all these different places. And I've done my research, and to be honest, for the 30 quid, for the other things that I was buying, I thought, I'll save the 30 quid and I'll try these lines. Now what's really bizarre is that when the lines turn up, now because I've got a hell set here, the actual line itself looks exactly the same, identical. So does the attachment bit. I forget what they're called, but the little attachment bit. They actually provide, they even look like hell bolts, and the actual ancillary, which I'm going to show now in another little clip. So as you just see in that clip, the actual ancillary is hell as well. So for all intents and purposes, they're just as good as the hell lines, but they're £30 cheaper. Now what's really good about them is if you do decide to change your master cylinder to a Brembo master cylinder, these are a slight stretch. And when you order your OHA Motorsport lines, you can ask for an additional inch or 2 inches, and I actually asked for a +3 on this set. I didn't actually need it. You only need about an inch or 2 inch because I bought 2 sets, one for this one and one for my A1P. So that's another great thing, that if you've got bar risers or anything like that, they make them up in-house, which is fantastic. Now, the biggest bone of contention is these 6-pot calipers. You will read that they're horrible, they don't work, they're hard to bleed,
they feel wooden. Now some of it I would agree with, as far as the performance of the brakes. Now, as I say, this was only the second ever used bike that I've ever bought. Everything else had been new. I've never changed lines and stuff like that, apart from on my RD350. And I started looking at brake pads first of all. I tried EBC double H pads, I tried EBC track pads when I went onto the track. I tried standard Kawasaki ones, Ferrero, which were in magazine, I think that's how you pronounce it. But I come across SBS pads, which are by far the best pads that I've personally used for this. And it's not their street pad, ironically, it is their track pad that I run in both my bikes, and the heat up time's absolutely fine. And they're the best pads that I've seen, and I'll put a little picture up of them now, or I'll put something just across so you know the exact pad that I'm using. Bleeding wise on these 6-pots, I've never found a problem. They bled absolutely fine, but even with those pads and steel lines, it still felt a little bit funny. And I started doing a little bit of research, because I thought, this can't be so that everyone's swapping to 4-pot calipers. And I started looking at the models before, and the ones with the 4-pot calipers before they changed to 6-pot, and they all had the same master cylinder. So Kawasaki had the same master cylinder for 4 pots as what they did for 6 pots. I thought, well, that's a bit bizarre, because when I started looking at Brembo, you can buy an RCS 19, RCS 17, 15, there's loads of different ones. And when you look at their calipers, there's loads of different calipers. But also, when you go onto their website, there's specific master cylinders for specific calipers. And they basically say that's to do with the size of the piston pushing pressure through to the calipers. And someone else said to me that it's not these that don't work. Now, if you're finding problems with them bleeding or whatever, I don't know what to say, because I have no problem with bleeding them. But I was finding them a little bit wooden, a little bit spongy. I mean, I'd still gone on the track without it, but again, I'm not going fast enough. But I took a chance and went for, on my A1P first of all, I put a Brembo RCS 19 Costa Quarter on. And this one's got a standard RCS 19. And the difference between the Costa Quarter and the standard one is around about 60 quid. And personally, I don't believe it's worth it. Just buy a standard RCS 19. So I put standard RCS 19 on here. Had the lines, had that, re-bled it, and there is a dramatic improvement. Massive improvement. It's the biggest improvement that you're going to see on your brakes. And I bought this, rather than buying it from the UK, I bought it from Chrome Burner, which I believe is in Netherlands. Bought the first one off of eBay, second one directly off of their website. After a long chat with them, that's why I went with the standard RCS, because the Costa Quarter's got this little knob on top which you don't bloody use. You set it to 1 and then you use it the same as on track, and you get your feel, and that's it. It's set. Your lever can be set of where you want it or whatever. This is the first time I've ever had one finger braking. Just absolutely incredible. And as I say, that's with the standard calipers, no problem at all. And when I went down to Brands Hatch to watch someone race their, I think it's a G model, who races in the pre-injection 1000, it's got exactly the same setup, no different. And he said people were telling him to change to 4-pot. He said, what's the point? He said, I'm out braking R6s, CBR 600s. He said, I don't need to. He said, I have no problem with bleeding them. You do find with these, I think they need more maintenance, and I think that's the biggest problem. And what I mean by maintenance is just cleaning them. But look at the bike, these pads get taken out, you know, they get taken out, get cleaned, this gets cleaned. So if you're not cleaning your bike, maybe go across to 4 pots, because if they're better on maintenance, but I can't tell you to. All I can say is these work and there's no problem. and if you're finding it a little bit woody, first thing I would do is definitely take the standard lines off and put braided lines. Personally, I would go with OHA, much cheaper. No point going for the other lines. Then I would buy an RCS 19. And the difference in prices in UK, I think Bike Talk Racing is something like 290, 300 quid for an RCS 19. I think it could even be more expensive. They're £170 from the Netherlands. Yes, you will pay tax and import duty, which I found around about 60, 70 quid. I paid about 230, 240 for this one, about 280, 290 for the Costa Quarter. And as I say, if I could go back, I wouldn't have bothered buying the Costa Quarter. So that's your brakes. Rear brake is standard. It's the standard rear caliper. You can see that I've painted them just to make them look nicer. You can't buy race pads in there, but that is a standard SBS double H street pad in there as well. And I'll put the pad that I've got in there. And a standard OHA line, and all I've done with the master cylinder is just taken it off and completely rebuilt it with new seals. There you go, that's the brakes.
So suspension, did the suspension need changing when I first got it? No, I didn't change it originally. I'd done it after I had a ride of 2019 ZX6R at the Peterborough show, and because I was looking at a new bike, because I thought, right, these are fantastic, I love these, let's go and have a look at the new one. Now the new one is excellent, it is a very good bike, but in the real world it's very light, it's a lot smaller. For my frame it didn't really suit, and it did actually pitch me over a little bit too much on my wrists, and looking at it I couldn't really sort that out. However, it revved a lot better, which is why I started switching the gearings round. And also, the suspension felt a lot better because it was obviously newer. So I thought, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to update my bike. Phoned up Maxton, ended up spending £2,000 because I tested a lot of bikes and I knew that at some point I would buy another one with low mileage, hence the A1P, so I wasn't losing out. However, I am tracking this, and this is why ideally the front suspension could needs heavier springs and that, but I'm not fast enough. The reason I've done the rear one was for a trial. I wanted to see, because some people have said that they're a straight swap from a 2019 2021 to this model, the rear shock, and I found a brand new shock. Basically it was a guy that was you would give him your bike, your ZX6R, and he would turn it into a track bike. So straight away he would take the shock off, and these bikes were coming to him brand spanking new. So it was a brand spanking new shock, and I paid £150 for it. Now £150, you can't get a bloody, you can just about service a shock for that. Now these are Showa shocks. You could argue, yeah, but it's a standard one, but there's enough bloody adjustment on there, and if I really wanted to, and I know people out there have changed to a K-Tex spring, and you can literally just unscrew it, put the K-Tex spring on and screw it back on. And there you've got a weighted spring, and there is actually plenty of damping. What am I? 12.5 kilos. 12.5 kilos. 12.5 stone. Right. 12.5 stone in full kit, and there is plenty enough damping in this shock. I haven't bothered changing the spring because I don't want to pay the extra 100 quid at the moment. It's not a direct fit, but it's nearly a direct fit. It is literally a 15-minute job to swap over, and I've got a video that you can follow. And this is just updating the bike. You know, you don't have to do that. The bike is great, but you know, new parts, if you could put new parts on it, is going to make it better. It's simple as.
Okay, so let's talk suspension, handling, geometry. A lot of this information came from the magazine. The other parts of the information came with from the amount of different bikes that I'd ridden and the new ones that I test rode. After riding the new 636, I really did like it. It was just slightly uncomfortable, and I knew that I wouldn't be able to sort that. And it was a firmer suspension. And when I went across to the Maxton suspension, that was kind of the same. And I think, like all of us, we think we're super fast, and so I had that suspension set up for fast road and track riding. And I didn't go on the track until I'd bought my A1P, and I had all of that put on the A1P, and I went around the track, and it was fantastic. It was great, far superior than what I actually need. And thinking back to it, do you need to change your suspension? Probably not. If you're just going to stay on the road, it's going to be absolutely sufficient. If you go on the track, the shock might be a little bit spongy. And that brings me on to this. After I decided that I wanted to keep this for the track, I mean, in an ideal world, I'd probably put the Maxton on here and then this stuff on the A1P, but the A1P is, I don't know, maybe I'm still a tart. If I turn up somewhere, I've got all the Maxton and everything on there, and is it for show? Probably, but also it is a hell of a lot better, and I've brought all the springs back and made that now more for road, and it is absolutely sublime. It is like a brand new bike. It is absolutely incredible. But going back to this and thinking that I'm going to go on the track, or had been on the track, I had the A1P rear suspension on now, had the standard A1P forks, and this was very, very spongy, and I didn't have another £2,000 to spend on Maxton suspension. And I came across a forum, and a guy had said about putting a 2000 and I think it's from 2013 up to 2021 rear shock on. And I asked him, I said, is this a direct bolt on? And he said, no, it's not. The top is a direct bolt on, the bottom isn't. You need to change the sleeve. He gave me all of the details, which was fantastic. I ended up buying this shock, which is offered for 2021 ZX6R. I think it was 2021 or 2019, but it was brand spanking new. And I paid 150 quid for the shock, which is absolutely fantastic, and then £30 for the different bits, so 180 quid. I've got a brand new 2019 shocks. I believe these are Showa shocks. The transformation just for that is dramatic, and I know a lot of people on the forum have then taken the spring out and put a K-Tech spring on, which is my next job, which is 90 quid, and I believe you don't need any tools. And I have got a video at the moment about fitting one of these, but I don't actually fit it, so I'm going to take it all off, put the spring on and refit it all back, so I'll do a full thing on there. Now, then we can go across to geometry and handling. Now, on the top here, there's 2 bolts on where the top suspension clips in, and there's actually 8mm difference, and what that does is that heightens and lowers the rear seat. And obviously if you're heightening the rear seat, your geometry is further forward, so you're putting more pressure on your wrists, and if you bring it back, you're sitting back more on your bum, and that's going to make a difference into how the bike turns. So I've actually, when the Maxton suspension is actually height adjustable as well, so you've not only got that adjustment, you've also got that adjustment. And I measured the Maxton suspension, and I measured this suspension, and the Maxton, the way in which it's come, fits fantastic with the top being at that complete top. That is the right height for me. So What I've had to do with this, because this is slightly smaller and I've maxed this out, is there's some bars just underneath here called dog bones, and these dog bones basically adjust the height again. They're just an addition to this. And I went through many different sizes, 40, 35, and obviously the higher you go, the quicker steering and unstable at higher speeds. The 40 mil, 100 mile an hour plus as you're accelerating made it very, very wobbly. So I actually came down, and 25 mil for me made it pretty much the right, as the same as what the Maxton is doing. But also what I've done is I've adjusted the front forks, and again, this is individual. You don't have to do it. If you're steering your feelings absolutely fine, don't adjust it. If you want to try dropping it by 5 mil, try that. If you don't like it, if you notice a difference, you know, and then want to try 10 mil or whatever, that's exactly what I done. I done 10 mil, then I done 15, and then done 20, and I found 20 was absolutely the sweet spot where I wanted. Now, this then goes into tyres, and the different tyres that you're running. Different tyres will have different profiles, and the different profile of the front tyre, it will be a quicker steering. So if you've got a tyre that's got a high profile, you might want to slow that down by raising the forks, or if it's not turning as much. So as I say, what I've done to mine is set up for my tyres how I like it, how I like the speed of it turning. Everyone that's and again, this is going back to like riding the 636 and riding the newer bikes and the Fireblades and that, getting this older bike that is heavier to react like a newer bike, and just updating slight bits on it. The front forks I do need to have weighted springs in, really, because where I've dropped it, I've had to wind the springs completely in because I'm breaking down at Brands from about 120, 130 across the straight. I nearly bottom out. So I do need to increase that, and to be honest, I know that I can brake heavier. I'm just scared. So yeah, hopefully that's gone through a few things of why I've adjusted and other things that you can do on the bike to improve the performance of the bike, of how you want it. You know, if you want a tourer, don't do it. You know, probably bring it down, leave the forks where they are, you know, and just have it more seated up. You might even want to put razors on. But how I have it, how I found for my back, how I found for my wrists, because as I say, I've got carpal tunnel, so having it further forward on my wrist, but not too much, but not too little, and enough off my back. It's that you've got to find your sweet spot. And I found my sweet spot with this bike and the A1P, and I absolutely love it. Every time, as I say, I've ridden many, many different new bikes, and I go out and ride them, and I then get back on this and I go, I prefer this. There you go.
Not everyone's got 10 grand to go and buy a new bike, you know. Just love it, just absolutely love these bikes. Honestly, I think if you bought one, I don't think you'd regret it. I don't think you would regret it. Everyone who's ridden this bike has gone, wow, what an amazing bike, what a great bike.
Now, depending on the condition of your chain, one of the cheapest and most beneficial modifications you can do to the bike is changing the gearing. Now, the reason I say cheapest is because if you have to buy a chain, that's when it becomes slightly more expensive. So if you've got a half decent chain with half decent life in, the standard front sprocket is a 15, standard rear is a 40, and the bike is geared for 160 mile an hour, and you need a hell of a long stretch of road for that, and it's not often that I do that speed, or I don't do that speed. So I want this bike to accelerate a lot quicker, to, let's say, 100 or 120 mile an hour. And what you can do is you can alter the gearing. So you change this from a 15 down to a 14, and then change the rear. Now, as a minimum, I would change that down to a 14. This is actually a 43, so I've gone up 3 on the rear. And the reason being is I've geared this particularly to Brands Hatch Indy, of how the engine runs and the gearing and everything on that. Most people will go 14, 42 or 14, 41. So I either go 1 or 2 up on the rear and 1 down on the front. Now, that will obviously take the top speed down to around about 145, 150th, but you'll get to 120 so much quicker. But the downside with it, and this is again another cost thing, is just here is your speedo pickup. So as soon as you as soon as you change your gearing, the speedo is going to be incorrect. It's going to read like 120 mile an hour when you're actually only doing like 100 or 70 mile an hour. Now, Hilltech do what they call a speedo healer, and it literally does that. It heals the speed, and you have to take your tank off because it comes with a wiring loom and a little module. There's a socket just underneath that you unplug and it tees in between, then run it back, and the little clips into the module just underneath. That's all you need to do. It's really, really simple. You then go on to an app, Hilltech app, and the app tells you how to program the module as to what you've changed. So going from a 15 to a 14 and from a 40 to a 43. And it tells you what to tap in on the module to then read back to the speedo. And it's absolutely fantastic because you can basically set it up like, I don't know whether you've ever used your sat-nav for speedo, and that's normally slightly different to your speedo because we've got a tolerance on the speedos, and you can actually set it up to like a GPS standard, so you can literally manipulate the machine. So it's absolutely spot on. So it does depend, as I say, that's 90 quid, and front sprocket is going to cost you between 10 and 20 pound. I would do that as a minimum, down to 14. You'll notice so much better throttle pickup if you're tutoring around town, let's say. And if you do the rear, that's going to cost you anything between 20 and 40 quid, and then a chain might be 50, 60, 70 pound, depending on the quality in which you want to go for. You can get full kits, but I played around a lot with the gearing to find out what I wanted out of the bike and what worked best. Now, changing the gearing, when I ride it on the road, now, if I'm doing 70 mile an hour, it's at 7,000 revs, where it used to be about 5.5, I think. So that obviously changes, and you do get less fuel economy if you're doing a lot of motorway miles, but you just find the bike will just, and you'll see from the videos, at 4,000 revs, I can potter around at 4,000 revs and just increase the throttle, and it pulls away. At 4,000 revs on a 600, if you're in 6th gear and try and do that, it is going to lag, and that's not how you ride the 600. You're doing normally thrashing. If I want to go, I will generally keep it 7,000-8,000 revs and above. But again, you see the speedo, you see the rev counter fly around because it's accelerating a lot quicker than what the standard bikes are, and I found that makes a huge amount of difference. I go on a speedo calculator, and I think this bike's now geared for around about 145, 150, but again, I don't top it out. You see the speeds that I'm going around Brands Hatch, I think it's 125, might be able to hit 130, so maybe take it a little bit better, but yeah, just the grunt out of corners is just dramatically different, and you're going to notice that even if you do that on a standard bike. I mean, if it was, that would be the first modification I would do, would be changing that sprocket down to a 14 and maybe going up one on the rear just to try that, or do the front first and then try the rear and go from there. But get that speedo healer as well, so your speedo's not reading too high, because if you just leave it, you're then clocking up more miles as well, which you don't want to do, because then that just depreciates your bike a little bit more.
The slight changes with the brakes and stuff. I mean, you could buy and get like decent brake setup, change your sprockets. I would say you're looking at about 2.2. You could probably get one and you'll have an amazing bike.
So I just wanted to go through one of the biggest bugbears that I've found with the ZX6R, and it really annoys me, like really annoys me, especially the way that I keep my bikes. And I'm just going to flip the camera around now. You probably noticed when I was riding this just at the top here, and if you're looking to buy one and you've looked around and you've seen this, it's actually nothing to worry about. It just looks bloody awful. Now, I actually spoke to someone who bought a 2002 one back in 2002, so he bought it brand spanking new, and within 6 months this happened, and they took the bike back, and basically the dealer said they're not responsible for it, and Kawasaki weren't really that fussed about it. And then they done a bit of research, and what they told me, it's to do with when you ride with your lights on, obviously your dashboard lights are on, and it heats up at that particular point and it melts. And if you're looking around, there's loads of them like it, loads of used ones like it. Even if you look at the ZX9, which is the same clock set as well. And there are some out there that look absolutely mint. And I'm going to spin. And this is my A1P that only had 1900 miles on the clock. Now, when I got it, it was mint. This wasn't here. And I ride with my lights on all the time throughout the day. So there you see, my lights are already on. So as soon as I start up, lights are on. Now, the only way in which you can sort this out is basically taking this Speedo front case off and going into the Speedo itself and changing the light bulbs for LEDs. And this is the LED set that I bought off of eBay. Now, it's not just a straight plug and play. I did have to open the holes up to a 5.5 mil. So I took the Speedo off. It's very easy to do. You take the screen off, there's 3 bolts, unplug the Speedo, there's 6 screws at the back, I think 6 or 5 screws at the back, and then just replace that, so it doesn't get any worse. But that really bothers me, you know. That bike's only done, that new one's only done 4,500 miles, you know, and I think that's a joke. And Kawasaki, I think, even now should replace them. Even 20 years on, I think it's disgusting. And I can buy a brand new one for 100 quid. That's what Fowlers want. It's 100 quid. Now, what I've done for, I'm not spending 100 quid at the moment, but I will do at some point because I want it perfect on the other one. And now that they've both got LEDs, unfortunately, I didn't learn that. To say that the person I spoke to had a brand new one, found out about the light set, and yeah, the dealers just weren't interested, and Kawasaki weren't interested. But what I've done for this one, I've got a used clock set that had 50,000 miles on the clock, and this one's just in better condition. I've just got to clean it up a little bit, and I'll just swap that over so it doesn't look as bad, and then I'll put that one on the one that had 50,000 miles on it, and I'll sell those clocks on and just try from that. But that, I've been very OCD. I hate it, absolutely hate it, and I think it's poor, really poor from Kawasaki. So if you're listening, Kawasaki, it just shouldn't happen, and I think you should replace them. For the amount that are out there now, you should just basically put a bulletin out. We should be able to give you our address, and you should be sending those clock faces out, I think, free of charge. I don't think we should be paying £100. I paid, like, I know I've bought them used, you know, but I've paid a hell of a lot of money for the A1P. And you know that there's an issue. You know that there's an issue. So yeah, that's my biggest bugbear. It may sound small, but it's just to let you know that if you've seen one with an issue, that's what you need to do. You need to put LEDs in there. Cheers.
You know, you got any questions? I mean, if you're local to me, you know, and you need help with it, I'll quite happily do it. You know, back hurts. Oh, it's really pushing in now. Oh, it's back home. Right guys, let's put this away, get this review edited.
Okay, so it's been a long video, but I've actually loved doing it. It's really interesting going back to my original thoughts on the bike and really how much it helped me, how much getting back on a bike mentally helped me, just to get on the bike, go down to Rikers, Box Hill, have a cup of coffee, or go down to Rye and have a breakfast at the cafe, and just ride home has just been sublime. And I don't think it could have been any bike, because I've ridden a lot of bikes. I think it was because it was this bike, the ZX6R J1, J2. I've said many times I absolutely fell in love with the bike, and a lot of my friends have wanted other bikes. They've looked at blades and stuff like that, and I've said to them, I said, look, I know you're going to spend £20,000 on a Fireblade. That's going to sit there. Your other bike's going to sit in the garage, and you're going to open up the garage and you're going to go, that Fireblade hurts me, I'm going to take the other one. You're going to have 20 grand's worth of bike just sat there doing nothing. And this is the thing. I can rave about this bike, but if you get on the bike and you feel it's uncomfortable, then it's not for you. You know, I can only tell you how I've got on with the bike, how I've personally set the whole bike up, all those little bits and pieces that I've done on the bike are to adapt the bike to me, to make it fit, to make it work. And I can't say enough about them. I just absolutely love the bike. I absolutely love it. Every time I go out on it, I smile. It's just so great. I just hope it comes across on camera how much I love it. You know, if you're in the I'm Erith, Kent. If you're in the Erith, Kent area, you know, drop me a message. You know, if you're having problems with something, these are the easiest bikes to work on. They are so easy, trust me. I'm not a mechanic, but I've gone front to back on it. Apart from going internals on the engine, you know, I know these bikes pretty much inside out, because I've just wanted to take everything apart, and I even take the tank off and clean underneath the engine and all the engine bay and everything. So yeah, I don't really know how to finish, because I just can't say enough about them. I just absolutely love them. But as I was saying, sorry,
going off track. If you're in the Kent Erith area, drop me a message, come over to the garage. You know, if you're insured, take the bike out, not fussed, you know. I'll follow you on the other one and put a little bit of fuel in it so you run out, just in case you're stealing it. But if you want help fitting something, you know, I'm there, you know. I'll try and help as much as I can, you know. It's been strange going back and now moving forward, you know. There's still more plans and more plans, you know. As I say, the next thing is spring on the rear. I've got front forks to do. I personally wouldn't strip the front forks, haven't got the tools for that, so they would go off. But yeah, thanks. Look, this has been a long video, and I really appreciate the time that you've taken just to watch it. Probably watched it in stages with a lot of coffee. But if you like the video, please like and subscribe, so I know that it's worth my time. It's probably taken about 6 weeks to do this video, and now it's bloody freezing. But yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed it. I'll shut up now. Yeah, cheers. Thanks very much, guys. Thanks for watching, and yeah, ride safe.